Okay, in this session we're going to go over behavior trees, AI, and setting up some enemy characters inside Unreal 4. To get us started, there's a few things that we have to create, such as an AI controller, an AI character, a blackboard, and a behavior tree. And we're also going to have to put a few things inside our game level to make the AI work. So to get started, we're going to make our character. So I'm going to right click. And you'll probably notice that I've made a new folder in the blueprint section called AI. It just means everything's separate. It makes it easier to manage. So again, I'm just going to right click, go to blueprint class, and going to go to character. And I'm just going to call this enemy AI. I'm also going to go to blueprint class and make another class. This time I'm not going to choose from anything here. I'm going to search for it. And I'm just going to type in AI, and what I'm going to get is an AI controller. So I'll just type in AI controller enemy. Going to open these both up. And what I want to do is just compile and save both of them. And with the enemy AI character, I just want to go to my class defaults. Okay, so make sure you have this selected in the top. And basically what I want to do is I want to change the AI controller class from AI controller to the one that we've just made, which is AI controller enemy. And just compile and save that. Next thing I want to do is create a behavior tree. So I'm just going to right click. We're going into artificial intelligence, and we're going to just select behavior tree. And we're just going to call this enemy tree. And again, we're going to go into the same area, right click, artificial intelligence, blackboard, and I'll just type in enemy BB for blackboard. Lastly, in the top left hand corner in the mode section, I'm going to get a nav mesh. Okay, so I'm just going to type in nav to search for it. And it's called the nav mesh bounds volume. I'm going to drag this into my level. I'm going to make sure that this actually covers the floor of my level, so make sure that it actually sits through it. And what should appear is a green box. Okay, if this doesn't appear, just press P on your keyboard to show a path. And this is basically representing the path area on which the enemy AI can navigate through. Okay, so if we placed our enemy AI outside of this box, it actually wouldn't be able to move. It doesn't know that there's a path there. But if we placed our enemy inside this, once we set up the scripting, it should be able to walk around. So let's open up our behavior tree and basically take a look at this new layout. What you will notice is automatically Unreal 4 looks for a blackboard asset, and it's kind of attached our blackboard asset enemy BB that we've just set up, so we don't actually have to associate these together. It does it automatically. If you have two or more of these though, you will have to manually come in here and decide which blackboard asset kind of sits with this behavior tree. But the behavior tree has a window here which shows the root, and from this root we can pull out and place new nodes. The two main nodes that we'll be using are our selector and sequences, and we'll go over it a later bit on what they are. We'll also be using our create new tasks, okay, which are kind of just like a blueprint task, and we'll also be using the new decorator as well. When it comes to deciding if our enemy should walk to a random location or actually search out and seek our player. So that's the behavior tree node. The blackboard node brings us to our blackboard, and basically this is where you house all the variables to do with the AI that the behavior tree can use. These variables aren't called variables, they're called keys. So just keep that in mind, because whenever we're using blueprints, we can't talk directly or can't use these keys directly. We have to kind of transfer the values that we have in our variables and blueprints over to these keys so we can use them in the behavior tree. It might sound complicated, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it all starts to make sense and the workflow is pretty cool. So the first thing we would probably want to set up is just having our enemy walk around in a random location. To do that, what we have to do is create a new task. So if we create a new task, it will actually take you straight into the blueprint for that task, and it will name it automatically, and it'll just give it a horrendous name. It will save that blueprint beside your behavior tree. So you can see here now I've got this task, and I'm just going to rename it. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to do. So I'm going to call this random location task. Some people like to make folders as well, just called tasks, and put all the tasks that are required for this enemy in there. Okay. So back to the blueprint for this. So this isn't your normal blueprint. Remember, this is a task blueprint. So the logic behind this works pretty much the same as a normal blueprint, but there's some execution pins that basically have to be used instead of, for instance, event begin play. So the first one is execute, and this is the first one that we're going to use is event receive execute. So whenever this task is basically called upon, this here node is going to fire off. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is we want to get the owner actor, but before we can do that, we're actually have to go into our controller, our AI controller enemy, and set up that this is actually using a behavior tree. So let's go to our controller, into the event graph for that, and we're not going to use event begin play or event tick inside this. What we're going to do is we're going to right click and type in possess, and we're not going to use under pawn or unpossess or anything like that. What we're going to do is event on possess up here at the top. And basically what this is, your controller basically possesses a player at the start of the game. So we want to use that event to kind of kick off a few other pins. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the possess pawn. We're going to get its character. And what we're going to do is type in behavior tree. And we're going to run a behavior tree. And from that list, we're going to just choose enemy behavior. Okay. So that's basically all you need for this section. We're going to go back to our random location task. Okay. So back in our random location task, what we're going to do is just pull out from this here and get AI controller. Okay. And then we're going to get the actor location. And from that there, we're actually going to just get a random location. So if we type in random, what we're going to actually use is get random points in navigatable radius. Okay, and we probably want to set that to something like, say, 3000. So this is where things kind of get a bit complicated, in that we're going to set a variable inside here, but it's going to be a special kind of variable. Okay, so we're going to go add a variable. We're going to call this random location. We're going to make it public, so remember that. In the variable type, we're going to search for blackboard, okay, and we're going to make it a blackboard key selector. So even though we want this to be a vector, it really isn't a vector yet. What we have to do is we have to get this, and then we have to set as, and then we can set it as a vector. Okay, and we're going to use that value as our random location and then connect these up. The last thing that we have to do for this node, or for this task, is to pull out at the finish and type in finish, and then what we find is finish execute. If you don't do that there, it'll just stay here perpetually. It won't leave this task. And just make sure that the finish execute node has success on it. Okay. Compile and save that. If we go back to our behavior tree and go into Blackboard, we're going to create a new key. And we'll just call this here location. We don't have to do anything with this now. All we have to do is go back into our behavior tree, and we're going to pull out from this, and we're going to use a selector to start off with, and then from that selector we're going to use composites sequence. Okay. And with this sequence, I'm going to go over what a selector and a sequence is later on, but with the sequence we're going to pull out and we're going to create a task here. There's some predetermined tasks already for you in here, but what we're going to do is use the move to one. Okay. And then we're going to pull out and use another task, and this here task is going to be our random location task that we've created ourselves. So this here one isn't a predetermined one. So basically what happens in a sequence is it will fire off its first child. If that succeeds, it will then move on to the second child. So we can get our random location task to get us the key value, which is a location, and then we can use that, okay, in the move to actor. So if I make sure that I've compiled and saved my random location task, go back to my behavior tree, my random location, okay, I can now use that variable that I've created in this task and attach it to a variable inside my Blackboard, and I'm just going to attach it to location. Then my move to, I'm going to make sure that the Blackboard key that it's going to use, okay, is location. Save that, and that should be our character working. If I open up my character though, you can see that I don't actually have any models for it. So what I'm going to do is just click on the capsule and just make sure that it's not hidden in game, and compile and save that. Put it inside the level, press play, and you can see now that it's searching out a random location inside that path area. So it will never be able to get outside of those bounds. So that's the first part of the video. The next part we're going to go over making the enemy able to see the player, and when it does see the player, to change its location from a random point to like searching out and moving towards the player, and then eventually being able to shoot the player. Okay, so the next part of this is we're going to make our enemy AI follow the character whenever it sees it. To do that, we're going to have to set up a new task inside the behavior tree. We're also going to have to add in a few custom events inside our AI controller, plus a new component in there. We're probably best off starting in that side of things. So if we open up our AI controller for the enemy, and we're going to just add in a new component here. If we just type in AI, you'll see we get AI perception. And if we click on that in the details panel for that component, we just have to add in a basic sense. Okay, so we've got an array of elements section here. Click on the plus, which is going to add in an element, and here is where we're going to choose what kind of sense we want the AI to have. So you can add in more than one to this. So the first one, or the one that we're going to use today, is called AI Site Config. And when you do that, you're going to get a new tab here just beside the 0. Under sense, another tab, and here are going to be the kind of the details or the configuration that you can do for this AI. So the sight radius, the loose sight radius, the peripheral vision that you might have in here. One of the things that we are going to change is under this detection by affiliation, we're going to have detect neutrals and detect friendlies on, just to make sure that it is detecting everything in the scene that has a controller. Once we kind of set that up, and again you can go back and tweak these settings if you wish, we're going to have our AI selected, or AI perception, and we're going to right click and we're going to go to add event, event dispatchers, and what we're going to use is add on target perception updated. And basically this is kind of like an overlap event. So whenever our character has, our enemy has sighted our player, we kind of want to do something inside our Blackboard. or inside our behavior tree. And it's really simple. So like an overlap event, you've got an actor that it's sensing, but another thing that you do have is this stimulus. Okay, and if you right click this is just a struct. We can split it, and what we're really after here is the bottom one, which is basically if it's sensed anything, okay, which is going to be our player. So what we want to do is we want to pull out this pin, type in cast to first person character, and we're going to use the other actor. So if it is our first person character, this is going to be successful. If it's not, it's going to be cast failed. And what we want to do is we want to just make sure that it has sensed our character to start off with. So I'm just going to pull this out and use it as a branch. And I'm going to use two print nodes. Okay, so print string, which is going to be see or can see, and then another print string, which is cannot see. So if it can see our player, it's going to print this off. If it can't see our player, it's going to print this off. We're going to compile, save, press play. And these print strings, as usual, are going to be up here. You can see it's working already. So if we walk over, our player can see us, can't see us. It's kind of hard to tell though where this enemy is looking. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our enemy AI. If you ever find this here, just click on the open full blueprint editor. What we're going to do is we're just going to go into the components and we're going to add in a few components just so we know what direction our character is facing. So I'm going to add in a box, or sorry, not even a box, a cube. And I'm just going to size this. So just resize this so it fits inside the capsule. Again, this is not really going to help us determine what way our enemy's facing, so we're going to add in a sphere as well. And this is going to be very cheap and nasty, but basically I'm going to add in the sphere, and I'm going to size it and just place it like it's a head. So that's probably the worst character you've ever seen, but in the game it will give us an idea on what way the character's facing. So compile, save, press play. You can see now the character won't be able to see us, but as it turns around it can see, and as it moves back cannot see. Okay, so that works. What we need to do though is we need to tie in this function to maybe a boolean inside our blackboard. Okay, so if I go to my behavior tree, open up blackboard, I'm going to create a new key. It's going to be a bool, and we're just going to call it can see player, and I'm just going to copy that name because I will be using it later on. So we're going to use this bool then to drive our behavior tree, and we're going to go back into our controller and we're going to delete all this branch and stuff. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to get our blackboard, so we can actually get our blackboard within the controller, and then we're going to go set value as bool, and the bool value, okay, is going to be driven by our sense, so it's going to set it to true or false. So once we've got this in, what we need to do is put in the key name basically. So that's why I copy and pasted the key name from here. And if we just pull that out and type in literal, you can make a literal name and just paste it in here. So what we have here is whenever our enemy senses our player, it's going to set the can see player bool inside our blackboard using the value in the sense. So it's either going to be on or it's going to be off. So if we compile and save that, this means that the bool can see player inside our blackboard is controlled now by our AI controller, which is pretty cool. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to make up a task where we can sense our player and get the location of our player, and then use that as a move to location, similar to what we've done here. So I'm going to pull out from our selector. I'm going to get another sequence, and I'm going to make a new task. Again, whenever you make a new task, make sure that you name it. So I'm going to go player location, and I'm just going to move it into my task folder. So in here, I'm just going to get the execution pin. So event receive execute. I'm going to get the character, so get player character. Going to get its location. I'm going to get a random point in navigatable radius. The radius that I'm going to set this to is probably like 600. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to type in player location, set it to a blackboard key, and then I'm going to set that. I'm going to get it first, sorry, and then I'm going to go set as vector. And again, whenever you have a task, you've got to finish the execution. So just pull out from this and type in finish, execute, success. So all this task is doing is whenever it's executed, it's going to get our player location. It's going to get a radius around that of like 600, and then it's going to set that as the player location key inside our blackboard. Okay, so compile and save that. Go back to our tree, pull out our sequence, get a task, and we're going to look for that player location. And then we're going to click on our player location. But remember, whenever you set a key or a variable inside a task and you want to use it inside your behavior tree, you've got to make it public. So compile, save, back to our tree, deselect it, select it, and you can see now we've got that variable, and we've got to tie it to something in our blackboard, and I'm going to say location. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is pull out from this here task, and I'm going to run another move to. Okay, and the move to blackboard key location, so it's the same as the one here. You could probably have just copied and pasted it. So we've got two similar sequences running, one that's just finding a random location and another one that's finding a player location and moving to or around that location. But we've got to tell the selector which one to use. Okay, so the way this sequence works is it will play the first child first, and then if it's successful it will play the second one. A selector works in that if this one fails, it will play the next sequence or the next part of the selector. So what we need to do is, if we click this sequence, we can right click it and we can add what's called a decorator. So basically this is kind of like a branch, a true or false statement sometimes, and what we're going to use is our blackboard. Okay, so we're going to use a value within our blackboard to drive this sequence to make sure if it works or not. So click on blackboard, click on the decorator, and what we want to do is we want to select a key, and it's going to be can see player, and we're going to say if this is not set, find a random location. So if we cannot see our player, we're going to find a random location. What we want to do though is we want to abort this whole sequence. Okay, if we cannot see our player, so what we're going to do is set the observer aborts to both, so both things abort, and then we're going to go over to this sequence, right click, add a direct decorator, blackboard. Again, it's going to be can see player. Is set is fine, because if we can see our player we want to run this, and then observer aborts both. Okay, so if this is not true, it's going to abort, which means it's going to pull back to this one. So if we click save now and we run our game, the player should find us and follow us around, which is not happening. So we're going to just check why that's not happening. Oh no, it is working. Okay, so it is fine. One of the things that I probably should have added in is with the enemy controller, what we can do is we can set the focus of the player. So if we go to a branch here, we can set focus, and we can just get the player character. So if we've seen our player, we can set it to our character, so it means just our enemy is going to look at our character, and if not, it's not going to focus on anything. Okay, so press play now. So you can see now our enemy is looking at our player. And if I try and hide it, it should go to a random location. And then when it sees us again, it's going to follow us. So the next part that we probably want to do is set up a shoot mechanic inside our enemy that if it does get to a certain distance within our player, it starts to shoot. So that will be the next part of the video. Okay, to start off with that firing function, what we're actually going to have to do is make a projectile for the enemy. So I'm going to right click here, make a new blueprint class, actor, and just call it projectile enemy. Open that up, and it's basically going to be the same projectile as our player, but it's only going to destroy itself if it hits something that's not the enemy, so it's not going to overlap with the enemy basically. So I'm going to grab the particle effect for this. So if I go to particles, and I'll just grab the assault rifle tracer, and then I'll put a box component or collision around that. That should be okay. And then we're going to have to add in the projectile movement as well. And gravity, going to set to 0. Initial speed will set to 1000, and max speed will set to 1000. I can adjust these later if I need to. In the event graph, I'm just going to grab my box, scroll down to the bottom, get the on component begin overlap. Going to get the other actor. I'm going to cast to enemy AI. So if it is the enemy, okay, I don't want it to do anything. Okay, so I don't want to use this one. If it's not the enemy, cast is going to fail. Okay, we're just going to say destroy actor, and it's going to destroy itself. And that should be it for that. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to the enemy AI. So this is the character class, and I'm going to create a new function. Okay, and I'm just going to call it fire function. And in this here, all we're going to do is spawn an actor from class, and that actor is going to be our projectile enemy. Spawn transform. I'm going to grab our arrow. You'll probably notice here, since my arrow is actually a child of this cube, and I've resized the cube, this arrow is kind of stretched out, which means that when we fire from this arrow, it's going to take all the kind of scale, rotation, and location from that, so the scale is going to be affected on our projectile. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag this arrow on top of my capsule, and I'm just going to make sure that the scale of it is actually set to 1 and all axis. Then my fire function, I'm going to grab that arrow. Again, you can rename that to whatever you want. I'm going to get the transform and plug that in. And then the event graph, okay, for my character, I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to get 2 custom events, and this is going to be fire, another custom event, and then this one's going to be called stop fire. In this fire one, I'm going to set timer by function name, and my function name is fire function, so I'm just going to copy and paste that in, and we're going to do that every 0.1 second for now, make sure it's looping. And then we're going to pause timer by function name, so make sure you use pause timer, not on pause timer. And again, we'll just copy paste that in. In our AI controller, what we're going to do is, so whenever we focus on the player for now, we're going to cast to our enemy AI. We're going to get our control pawn as our object, and we're going to fire, which is going to set off that timer. And then when we lose focus, we're going to cast our enemy AI with using the control pawn again. I've just copy and paste it, and we're going to get the stop fire function or custom event that we've created. So if we save all that, press play, our enemy should start firing when it sees us, and you can see it's disappearing once it hits us. We could take that one step further by going back to our enemy AI and going into that fire function that we set up. And what we could do is we can get the distance to, and our target is ourself, and the other actor is, we could get to the player character. What we could say is, you know, only fire off this fire function if we're a certain distance. So if I pull out the distance 2, I could say, you know, are you less than, let's see, we'll start off with 200. So are you 2 meters away, then you can start firing. Actually, we'll not make that 200, we'll make that 400 for now. And branch, and plug that in. So now this fire function is only going to work if the player is at 4 meters or 400 centimeters to the enemy. So if we go here, so the enemy's seeing us now, won't start firing until it's pretty close. And again, we can change that, you know, we could make that 900, so 9 meters away. You can see now it's firing from a greater range. And it'll stop firing, and then when it sees us, it will start. So that's how you set up a firing function. And the cool thing about this is, with that projectile enemy, what you could say, you know, is, okay, check if it's hit the enemy. If it's not hit the enemy AI, okay, don't destroy itself. But if it's hit the player, you can take health off the player really easily. So if I get rid of this here bit of scripting, and I can go, right, is the other actor, and I'll get the class of that actor, and I'll just say, is that equal to the first person character? So put a branch in here. What you could do then is cast to your first person character, using this as the other object, the other actor. And then if you had health in your player, you could call the health amount, and we'll put in the damage taken as 20 and save that. So now if this overlaps with the player, it's going to take health off them, and then we could just say destroy actor. So we could save that, press play. You can see now I've taken health pretty quickly because I've got the fire rate up very high. So that's pretty simple to do, and then obviously, like, if you've got too much health taken off, if you've got 0 or less than 0, you die, you've got to restart the level. Very basic stuff that you can set up after that.